Good afternoon, students. Myself, Dr. Bhat from the Department of H&S. In the first lecture, we have discussed various acts: Environmental Pollution Act, Air Protection Act, Water Protection Act, Wildlife Protection Act, Forest Protection Act. We have discussed the different provisions or resolutions passed by the Government of India in order to minimize the effect or the emission of unwanted or harmful substances into the various components of the earth, that is air, water, land, in order to make the people aware regarding the harmful effects of unwanted or harmful substance. We have discussed the various types of the acts. Now today our lecture, that is the second lecture, we will discuss about the management of wastes. First we should know about the waste. A waste is unwanted substance in the environment. So how we can manage those wastes which are very harmful for the sustenance of human life, plants, animals, and the property. We will discuss one by one. The main contents of today's topic are: first one is municipal solid waste management, biomedical waste management, and hazardous waste management. How can we manage these wastes in the environment? The first one is municipal solid waste management. It is defined as a systematic process of controlling the generation, collection, storage, transportation, processing, and disposal of solid wastes from cities and towns in a very environmentally friendly, sound, and efficient manner. How we can control the whole process of solid waste management? We have different process of generation, process of collection, process of storage, process of transportation, processing, and disposal of these wastes from very important cities and towns in a very environmentally friendly manner. This involves This involves the steps, strategies like segregation, recycling, compositing, and sanitary landfills, along with public awareness. Public awareness is very important in the process of management of solid wastes. So we should have some campaigns and regulatory oversights about the harmful effects of these solid wastes, how to prevent the pollution, and we should have a proper knowledge about the public health issues, various types of health issues the humans are facing due to these solid wastes. We have some diagrammatic representation: papers, glasses, organic matter, and plastics. These are the various dangerous solid wastes that can affect the environment and human life. So what are the key components of municipal solid waste management? Municipal solid waste management, yani how can we manage these wastes? First is generation control. Yani we have to minimize the amount of wastes created. In the first place, Yani we should have to minimize the various, yani we should have the limited use of natural resources. So we should have to minimize the wastes created in the first place through prevention and reuse. Second one is collection and segregation. Collection and segregation means collecting the wastes, or we can say gathering the wastes from households, businesses, and sorting it to the source into categories like biodegradable, recycling, non-recycling. Yani we have to divide the wastes into the categories, that is like some wastes are biodegradable, some wastes are that can be recycled, yeah, some wastes that are non-recyclable. We should have to collect and segregate them. Then there is a process of storage. Yani we should have to use the appropriate containers and methods for storing the waste before it is collected. Yani we should have the proper methodology, or we can say the containers or for storing these waste. Then the important one is that is transportation. Yani ki we have to move the wastes that we have collected wastes from collection points for processing or disposal sites. Processing, how we can process the solid waste management. And this is treating the wastes to reduce its volume and harmful effects. And we have to process it in order to reduce the harmful effects of the solid wastes on the environment. Yani the common method of this processing involves compositing, and this process is used for organic wastes in order to reduce their volume and the harmful effects of organic waste. The second one is recycling. And recycling is for the materials like paper, plastic, and metal. These are the materials that can be recycled. And one more process is incineration. Incineration means controlled burning for energy recovery. And these are some of the processes. Now, what are the important challenges we are facing while managing the municipal wastes? One is public health. Improperly, if we cannot manage the municipal waste, solid wastes properly, we have some public health issues, yani ki that can lead to the unsanitary conditions and spread of diseases. The second one is environmental protection. Yani we should, while managing the municipal wastes, we should keep in mind the protection or prevention of pollution of air, water, and land. One more is economic and social factors. We have various types of challenges while we are managing the municipal wastes. Like we should have challenges like limited funding. We have not enough funding for the storage, transportation, and processing of these wastes. Some technical capacities, technical faults are there which hinder our path of solid municipal solid waste management. We should have some public transport participation, and public is not also participating us, so that makes it very difficult for the management of municipal wastes. What regulatory and what is the government role for the management of these municipal wastes? Yani we should have urban local bodies that must be responsible for the managing of these solid wastes within their jurisdictions, requiring them to plan, implement, and monitor these systems. Government bodies provide regulations, guidelines, and programs like Swachh Bharat mission in India to improve the waste management practices. These are some of the regulations, and this is the direct role of the government that is very important in the management of municipal solid wastes. And the second one is biomedical wastes. What are biomedical waste management? Management means storage, control, collection, segregation, transportation of these wastes. That is known what we call as. So biomedical waste is a critical process. Why? For the safer disposal of hazards and infectious wastes from healthcare settings to prevent harm to the human health and the environment. It involves strict protocol for the collection, segregation, storage and transportation of this waste, which is then treated and disposed at specialized facilities. But here the proper management of biomedical wastes is very important and crucial, essential. It is considered as a significant portion of healthcare wastes because healthcare wastes is very infectious that may affect the humans very much. Now, what are the key components of biomedical waste management? The first one is SAM, collection and segregation. First, wastes must be separated at the source into different categories using color-coded bags, just like yellow. Human anatomical wastes, animal anatomical wastes, expired and discarded drugs. यानी कि yellow color coded bags, यानी कि yellow bags are used for human anatomical wastes, animal anatomical. Then there is a red color bags that contains contaminated wastes like plastics, like tubes, syringes. Then there are white bags, यानी कि sharps, we can use this for needles. Scalpels should be placed in puncture-proof containers. Then blue color, glass and metallic body pots should be stored in blue color coded bags. Then there is the process of storage. Waste is stored in designated secure locations within the premises. Storage time are limited to prevent the accumulation of hazardous materials. Just like hospitals with over 250 beds should not store wastes for more than 8 to 10 years. And those hospitals who have the accommodation of 250 beds, they should not store the waste for 8 to 10 hours. Nursing homes should not store the wastes for more than 24 hours. These are some of the storage techniques that should be put into consideration before storing the biomedical wastes. And one more is transportation. Waste is moved from collection points to the storage or treatment facilities. Just like waste containers must be tied before transportation. These are some of the steps that should be taken while transportation of the biomedical wastes. The second one is manual loading should be avoided as much as possible. And the third one is that transportation should be done in covered trolleys or trolleys. And then one more process, treatment. Various methods have been used to decontaminate or destroy the waste to remove pathogenic microorganisms. What are the treatment methods? Autoclaving. Yani in autoclaving, we can use steam under pressure. The second one is microwave heating. In microwave heating, we can directly use the electromagnetic magnetic radiations. Incineration, this is the technique of burning, yani कि we should burn the biomedical wastes at a very high temperature. And one more is chemical disinfection, yani कि we can use certain types of chemicals to neutralize the wastes, and just like sodium hypochlorite. We can use that as a chemical, as a disinfectant in order to neutralize the wastes. Then the important process is disposal. Disposal means when the wastes have been treated through different types of methods that should then be disposed in a manner that is environmentally friendly, often at a common biomedical wastes. And these are some of the processes or how we can manage the biomedical wastes. Then the third type of wastes, third category of wastes is hazardous wastes. How we can manage the hazardous wastes, those wastes which are very dangerous, how we can manage them is known what we call as hazardous waste management. It is a comprehensive process of collecting, treating, storing, or disposing, or we can say recycling of dangerous wastes to protect human health and the environment. So, the process of management is to protect the human health and the environment. So, we have to manage the wastes, yani hazardous wastes that are very dangerous. We need the proper process of collecting, treating, storing, and disposing. This management involves various procedures, including proper packaging, proper labeling, and the transportation facility should be very good. And we can use different types of methods like chemical, thermal, biological, and physical treatments to handle these hazardous materials like solids, liquids, gases from industrial and domestic activities. What is the main goal of preventing process of collecting, treating, storing, and disposing of these hazardous wastes is in order to prevent the pollution from the source like inadequate storage, transportation, disposal, which contaminate land and water. If the land and water is contaminated, so the land will be less fertile. So we cannot use that land for the process of cultivation. And second one is water. Water should not be polluted because it is important for the sustenance of life, for cooking, bathing. We can use it for drinking purposes. So we should save the water. It should not be contaminated with these hazardous waste that may affect our life. About 40% of people in India are dying annually due to this water pollution, because contaminated water can have health problems, cholera, typhoid, and malaria. Due to these, we have to properly manage this hazardous wastes. So these are some of the diagrammatic representation of hazards, how we can maintain the hazardous wastes. These are some of the diagrammatic. What are the key aspects of hazardous waste management? First is collection, treatment, storage, and disposal. This is the core of hazardous wastes. What is the core of managing the hazardous wastes? Collection, treatment, storage, and disposal. Waste is collected, then it is treated, using certain types of methods, or like we can say chemical or thermal processes. Then we can store them in different structures, designated areas, and then we can dispose of these hazardous wastes in a way that minimize the harm. We should not be harmed while disposing these hazardous wastes. And then the second one is source reduction and recycling. The most desirable approach for the hazardous waste management is to reduce the amount of hazardous wastes created in the first place. So the main process is to create minimum hazardous wastes that are harmful. Yani we should have a limited use of natural resources, that we should minimize the amount of these hazardous wastes in the first place, or we should recycle it for other productive uses. Yani ki we should convert the hazardous wastes into the useful products for the proper use. And one more process, proper packaging and storage. Hazardous wastes must be placed in leak proof, that should not be leaked, and we should store them in a leak proof closable containers that are compatible with the waste container. Container should not be overfilled. If you are storing the hazardous wastes into a container, it should not be overfilled. It should not be overfilled and must be properly labeled with the information about the type of the waste. And which type of the hazardous waste have been stored in a particular type of the container, it should be labeled with the name. That is important to understand, to get the information about the type of the waste you have stored. That is very important. And label it with the information about the waste type, quantity, how much quantity, and what is the main source of the hazardous waste. That is very important. This information is very important for proper packaging and storage of hazardous waste. Storage area should have secondary containments. Yani secondary containments where you should store, yani the areas where you should store the hazardous waste should have the secondary containment like sloped floors, collection pits to manage spills. Proper packaging and storage. Proper packaging. Hazardous waste must be placed. These are some of the process. One more is safety precautions. Technologists, workers that are handling the hazardous wastes with appropriate protection should be with appropriate protection equipments, and activities like sampling are done in a designated, well ventilated areas. These safety precautions are very must where we are handling with the hazardous waste that may affect our life badly. So this very process is very important. We should have the appropriate protective equipments, and the sampling should be done in a designated manner, and the area should be well ventilated. Not procedures are put into place to prevent dangerous situations such as pressure build up in containers. And pressure should not be built up in containers where we store the hazardous wastes, otherwise it will be very dangerous. Transportation. The transport of hazardous waste is a critical step. Waste must be securely packaged and labeled to minimize the risk during transit to a treatment or disposal facilities. Then we have regulatory oversight. Government should play a very important role in the management of hazardous wastes. Hazardous wastes are very dangerous. So government must take an active part in the management of these hazardous wastes and regulating hazardous wastes management through proper laws and rules. There should be proper laws and rules from the government bodies how to handle, how to manage these hazardous wastes that dictate how wastes must be handled throughout its lifestyle. That is a very important. That is very important while we are handling or managing the hazardous wastes, because these are very dangerous. They can affect the environment and can affect the human life, plants, property. So we will have to put some precautions. We will have to follow some rules, guidelines, provisions set up by the government in handling these very wastes. Either it should be the solid waste management, biomedical waste management, or hazardous waste management. The process of storage, the process of segregation, the process of collection, the process of transportation, and the process of disposal should be, we should be well aware about these different types of processes to handle these various wastes, either the solid waste or the biomedical waste or the hazardous waste. But the government should play the active part. There should be the government officials that should make the people aware about the health effects of these wastes, how to handle these wastes, how to properly manage these wastes in order to minimize the effect of these wastes on the environment. That is very important. So today this was the lecture about how we can manage the biomedical wastes, solid wastes, and in the next lecture we will discuss various types of environmental impact assessments, and it will be discussed in the next lecture. So thank you, students. Thank you.